Hey everyone, my name is Blue. I did my analysis on facial recognition. What is facial recognition? Facial recognition is technology that is used to recognize human faces, available to match faces from databases, and convert images into data. A quick little history on facial recognition. It was formed in 1960 after Woodrow Wilson Bledsoe developed a system that classified photos of faces. The system allowed new photos that were taken to be compared against existing photos in a database. But of course, this technology was way ahead of its time, but it showed possibility of what could be. By the late 1960s, law enforcement became intrigued and funded Bledsoe for more research. During the Super Bowl, law enforcement used facial recognition on the crowd. Many thought this was a violation of Fourth Amendment, which was the right to search and seizure. This launched the first widespread police use of technology with Florida County Sheriff Office, which is now the local and largest database in the country. Because of the interest in facial recognition, there's a increase coming. There's a high demand for facial recognition from many companies, law enforcement, government. In 2022, the facial recognition market was valued at $5.1 billion and is expected to grow to $19.3 billion by 2032. That is a 19.3% increase from 2022 to 2032. Financial recognition technology is being increasingly used for identity verification, access control, and criminal identification for various industries such as government, healthcare, and banking. The growing trend of digital transformation across industries is also driving the demand for facial recognition technology. Technology being used in various applications such as retail, healthcare, and transportation to enhance customers' experience and improve operational efficiency. So how does facial recognition work? Here I posted a small picture showing sort of the basics of how it actually works. But facial recognition measures the patterns of one's face. We all have our own unique facial features. With every contour and every facial expression, each one of us is unique in our own way. So facial recognition uses biometric technology to map our facial features with a video or a photograph. And after doing so, it compares our face to a database of known faces. Now, this isn't always 100% accurate. A test done by the National Institute of Standard and Technology. The algorithm for facial recognition was a 99.97% of accuracy. And this is great numbers, but this was done in a controlled setting where you were easily able to match faces. But when it was done in public with people walking, moving, talking, the error rate went from 0.1% from a mugshot photo to a 9.3% from a photo taken by someone in public. So, facial recognition uses biometric technology, and this technology is not only used for facial recognition. You can do voice recognition, fingerprint recognition, iris scanners, handwriting recognitions, and it's also used in capturing someone walking, I guess their gestures on how they move for security clearance. So the way they walk, the way they talk, everything can be done with biometric technology to allow access. The way this is done is using sensors, using their computer and software. So with the sensors, it's used by gathering information of your face. So kind of like when you first got your iPhone and it had the fingerprint and now it has the facial recognition, you had to constantly place your finger on the sensor sides of your fingers so it can get your perfect fingerprint to unlock your phone or purchase something from the App Store. And with facial recognition on your iPhone, you had to move your face side to side, up and down in circular motion so it could capture every facial feature on your face. And when it does this, it collects all this data and stores it for comparison. And with the software in your iPhone, it holds it and connects it all together with the sensor and everything to make sure that it's you when you unlock the iPhone. So it captures everything, and if someone were to grab your iPhone, it wouldn't unlock because it already captured your unique facial features that I talked about earlier. Your facial expressions, your contours of your face, all that stuff. Biometric technology uses that to make sure that you are that individual and that you can essentially clear the clearance or the security clearance for whatever it is that you need to do. Is facial recognition safe? It's scary to think about, but it's probably not as safe as we think it can be. Obviously, for protecting your information, things like that, it can be, but it can lead to harassment. Essentially, you're giving up ownership of your photos. You can be mistaken in the database for someone else's identity, and it's almost impossible for you to remain anonymous. So someone can be out in public and just like the way you look and take a photo of you, and they can use any software they want that allows them to use your photo that they took, match your face to social media. Police can do it all. They do it all the time, but someone can match your photo to social media or a video or your school catalog, anything, and find you and your name without even speaking to you in public. And once they do that, they are able to find more information on you based off of just your name alone. There's public records, there's Facebook, all that stuff that you have your name on, and they can start stalking you, and that's not very safe to do to someone. It's a little scary to think about that that's actually how people find out so much about someone. Not because we use technology, none of us are actually very secure, but it's not super safe to say that facial recognition is safe. It's very scary to think about sometimes, but I included this short video here, and it talks about facial recognition and what we can see in the future, how safe it is, and what happens to our data after it's used. The video kind of talks about how more and more companies are starting to use facial recognition for purchasing items, tickets for venues, and things like that, so that you don't have to use essentially cash or your debit card, or just in general for entrance to anywhere. And this is a little nerve-wracking because they're required to only keep your information for 24 hours, but everyone's security measures are different. Are they going to only keep it for 24 hours? Are they going to use it against you, or is someone in their company, has malicious intent. You just never know. So it's a little scary to think about that some people or companies want to use just facial recognition for things like that. And you're welcome to opt out of it. I just don't know if many companies that are solely doing that will allow you to enter, or like the venues and not the purchasing. I'm sure that's fine. But it's still scary to think about that you're no longer for yourself and your identity can be mistaken. You can just by buying a ticket to a venue, you can be there and they mistaken you for someone else that did a crime while you were there and they were there. So it's a little scary. And with your photos being given up, we all experience that doing posting them on social media. We don't think about how if we post this photo of us looking super cute at the beach, someone's going to take it and use it for facial recognition, because you can take someone's photo and use it as facial recognition to unlock whatever they need to unlock to, essentially take your identity or your information.
This is your tech news briefing for Wednesday, March 8th. I'm Zoe Thomas for the Wall Street Journal. You're probably familiar with the concept of facial recognition. You may have just used it to unlock your phone. The use of facial recognition is growing. Concert venues, sports arenas, even airlines are beginning to let people use their faces as their tickets. And while that may seem convenient, some lawmakers are looking to tighten regulations around this kind of tech, citing privacy concerns and allegations of bias. With me to discuss the increasing use of facial recognition tech and how to keep your data safe is our personal tech columnist, Nicole Nguyen. Hey Nicole, thanks for joining us.
Hi Zoe.
Nicole, I'm sure a lot of listeners have a general idea of what facial recognition tech is, but can you give us a brief overview of how it works?
Facial recognition tech, as it is today, is basically face matching software. Some software takes an image of you, maybe via camera in real life, or they look at a government-issued ID, and then when you approach that technology via an entry point like a boarding gate, for example, before you're about to get on an airline, that camera and the software behind it will match your face that it sees in the camera to your government-issued ID.
Okay, so a boarding gate seems like a little bit of a new place that I might be encountering this. What are some of the newer places that people might experience facial recognition tech?
The U.S. government has been using facial recognition technology for a long time in places like airports and at border crossings, but increasingly you'll see facial recognition tech in places like concert venues, stadiums, and in airports especially. I recently encountered the tech at a trade show conference in Barcelona where there were tens of thousands of attendees, and the technology was sort of used as an express lane to get people really quickly through the venue to the trade show floor.
Okay, so you can just use your face as your ticket. That seems a little bit handier. It's certainly difficult to lose that. But how safe is this data? I mean, with anything, I think we worry about what happens to this information.
It really depends on where you are. In the European Union, where I attended this conference, the law dictates that anyone who uses facial recognition has to delete that data within 28 days of the final use of the service, and that data must be stored in Europe. In the US, the laws are a little bit different. There are a smattering of state-based laws in places like California and Illinois, but there is no federal law governing facial recognition. And so consumers really have to look into the privacy policies of these companies if they're concerned with their biometric data being shared elsewhere.
Okay, so what can people do to protect their biometric data?
Well, you can certainly look at that company's privacy policy to see how long they're retaining the data, where they're storing it, but ultimately you cannot predict whether or not that company, if they do choose to keep your biometric data, chooses to pivot in the future. Maybe today they're an access point entry company that's trying to process people who are going through a stadium. Maybe tomorrow they're signing up with law enforcement to provide a facial recognition product to police or other agencies.
I imagine that some listeners have heard about the issue of facial recognition bias. Can you tell us what the concerns around that are?
Research has showed that facial recognition technology is not as accurate for people of color or for women in general. And so if it's not accurate, that may not be as consequential if you're trying to get through an express lane to a stadium, but the consequences are much more grave if it's in the hands of law enforcement and they're trying to arrest somebody based on facial matching software.
You mentioned some of the differences between the US and Europe in terms of where data can be stored by these facial recognition companies. Is there a big difference overall in how lawmakers are approaching this kind of technology?
In the US, it's very state-based. States like California and Illinois have biometric data privacy laws, but outside of those states, you're not protected by those laws because there is no federal law governing how biometric data needs to be deleted, stored, shared at the US level. Several lawmakers have tried, but those laws have not made it through Congress in any significant way. But I think that we may see more interest in the future as more of these facial recognition access points pop up in public places, like I said, concert venues and stadiums and places like that.
And what about in Europe? Are they being more active there in terms of initiating laws for facial recognition?
Well, now the data privacy laws in Europe dictate when companies need to delete this data and where they can store it and what they can do with it. And beyond that, there are proposals for banning facial recognition for uses like for identifying people in protests, for example. In private spaces, I think it's generally acknowledged that if you consent to facial recognition being used on you, then that's sort of an appropriate use of it. But a non-appropriate use is the government knowing your identity when you're in a public square or at a protest.
It seems like there is going to be more and more use of facial recognition. If you want to opt out of, say, all of it, is there a way to do that?
Most of the companies today allow you to opt out of facial recognition unless you're at a place like an airport where it's hard to evade if you're going through an international border. But if it's a private company, like for example at Citi Field, where if you're attending a Mets game, most of the entry points have a facial recognition lane and a regular schmegular ticket lane, I think that over time, the non-facial recognition option could become very cumbersome. Like for example, paying cash at a toll booth rather than using EasyPass for those who travel interstate on the East Coast. And so if non-facial recognition options become cumbersome, then to opt out may be a huge pain in the future.
Got it. So our faces are now our tickets to everything, or maybe our faces will be our tickets to everything in the future.
Yep, that's right.
All right, that's our personal tech columnist, Nicole Nguyen. Thanks for joining us, Nicole.
Thanks for having me.
All right, that's it for today's Tech News Briefing. For more tech stories, head over to our website, WSJ.com. I'm Zoe Thomas for the Wall Street Journal. Thanks for listening.
So the security for biometric technology, i.e. facial recognition, though it's claimed to be the safest way to protect your information, more so than passwords, because hackers can easily manipulate your password, figure it out, anything really with a password, especially when you're posting on social media about certain things, and the majority of the time people use their life as their password. So that's easily manipulated, easy to hack, easy to gain your information, versus biometric technology in facial recognition. It's a little more difficult to hack someone, but the possibility is not none. So your data is collected and stored without your knowledge. Hackers can steal your data, and you're not really sure who is actually accessing your data. Not all software is created equally. Not everyone has the same protection or care for protection. So like the ticketing venue that uses your facial recognition, how they're only allowed to keep your data for a small amount of time, but will they actually delete it after this, small period of time? Is there a worker that has malicious intent, who plans to use everyone's data there, or the people he chooses to gain access to their information, use it against them, just really anything. And Apple has a perfect example of how they sort of protect you. Security wise, they have a 3D mapping of your face when they use your facial recognition, which is why you have to look, side to side, up and down, circular motion. And this allows hackers not to be able to use just a 2D photo of you and place it against your phone for unlocking, or your Apple Pay. Sometimes it's just your facial recognition, and send themselves money, or really anything. They can't do it. Is there a way? Yes. There's always a hacker or someone out there trying to figure out a flaw to a system. Which is good and bad, because you can easily fix those bugs, or you can get hacked. But hackers have found a way to go about doing this and using AI to create a Frankenstein face. They do this by attaching different parts of different people, features, and they do this by collecting all their data, placing the face together, and then using essentially your data, your social security, your banking information, your phone number, your address, and claiming to be you, so stealing your identity. And a lot of the times we don't go through every company, every software, and our facial recognition, our data, or biometric data, any kind of data we have is not in that system. So they can easily pretend to be you and use your facial recognition and all your private information to gain access to whatever they need, or fraud. Experian found that hackers were using this, and many people don't protect themselves enough because they assume biometric system will protect them, which is not the case. And you can change your password and be protected, but you can't change your face. So once you're compromised, that's it. They have everything. So even though it is safe, there is still some precaution to take, and we need to better protect ourselves. So how do we protect ourselves? Well, there's many things that we can do to protect ourselves from getting hacked, or just in general keeping our privacy. We can use strong paraphrases, constantly changing your paraphrase or password to something more difficult versus just, password and replacing the O with the 0 and adding 1, 2, 3 at the end of it. You can use an actual paraphrase. My favorite candy is Hershey's 005 exclamation point. Something that makes it difficult for someone to break into your system and steal your information. And keeping your software up to date. That's some people don't like to update their phones or their computers or anything, because it takes time. Sometimes you want to just keep using your phone or your computer, but those updates allow you to have security updates, and it's not always just a bug fix. It's not always just, a new software. It's also security updates that will protect your information and protect you from getting hacked, or for your security measures to work correctly. So we want to keep those up to date and safe. You also want to try to do two-step authentications, kind of like how we do now with the Duo app. You are able to see who is logging on, or even if you're logging on, it sends you a second authentication. You want to do that for everything, because those are harder to crack and they notify you than just a plain old password. There's also identity monitoring services. Experian has Experian Identity Works, and this allows you to spot fraud early and has fraud resolution and up to $1 million in identity theft insurance. But of course, the best way to kind of protect yourself is to opt out from biometrics data use. Not just on your person or just on anything, but like social media, you can opt out of it. Posting your pictures and getting tags, and it recognizes your face and will tag you and someone else. So you can opt out all those things, and I think that's the best way to keep yourself from being hacked, or keeping your privacy at bay, because if you're constantly just putting yourself out there for facial scans or your fingerprint scans, it's going to be very hard to keep yourself protected, because you have so much data out there. Anyone can use it, anyone can capture it, anyone can grab it, and we just need to limit ourselves better. I know it's hard with today's day and age where we want to share everything, but once your facial signature is taken, that's it. They can use it for anything. So if we just bare minimal with it, keep our parafaces super strong, constantly updating our devices, and two-step authentication, I think we'll be better protected and safe for you. Also, you can get identity protection software, and that's probably what's going to come in the future, where we need to have all these things to better protect ourselves and keep our privacy. So there are pros and cons to biometric technology, i.e. facial recognition. And one of the pros is that we're able to identify missing people, which is amazing, because a lot of people go missing, a lot of kids get taken, a lot of people get lost. You just never know, and with that technology, we're able to capture their data, and try to find them using security cameras, or just really any database that we can use. It's also good for identifying criminals that maybe are on the run. We have their mugshot, and we're able to locate them on, like, if they were to go to the gas station, try to rob the gas station, we're able to identify based off of the security camera in the gas station, and compare it to them and start tracking them, I guess, essentially. Airports are also identifying criminals and even threats before they enter the airports. And again, this is just based off of people's facial features and facial expressions and the movement of how they're going about the airport, or nervousness. It's easy to capture them if they're on the watch list, or if they're on the run again. They're able to capture those things and find them and get them before any threat is even possible. But of course, with pros, there comes cons. And you pose a threat to yourself or your privacy, allowing biometric data to be saved to any device. Now, this can be your iPhone, your computer, really anything, because you don't know who's accessing that data. You can't control it once it's in someone's database that you've used once or twice, like the ticketing scenario, or paying for something using just your face. And I think criminals can kind of take this and use it against you, because your data is in a database that may not be protected as well as you think it is, or that you want. You can also be mistaken. Your identity can be mistaken, good or bad. I don't think a mistaken identity is good, but you can be mistaken for a criminal, and that's not always the best case. There has been cases where people are innocent and are found guilty because they just look like someone, or there's a similarity in what they do that is like the criminal himself or herself. So that's not like the biometric technology behind it needs to be better. And obviously it's because there's no way to capture public movement. Like when you're out in public, you're not sitting there turning your face side to side, up and down in circular motions in front of your iPhone to capture the perfect facial recognition. We're talking, walking, our facial expressions are different every second. So that's something that the software needs to be better at, and I think we'll get there. Another con is aging. That is difficult because we all age. It's inevitable. We're not going to go back in time or anything like that. But it is difficult for your biometric data to be compared to what you did when you were 18 to when you were 20, that you're now 20. It's your facial expressions change, your facial features change. You could be a burn victim. Really anything can trigger it to not either have a faulty positive or a faulty negative. So it could unlock or lock your phone, and it's still you, which I think hackers will gain from this, because they can just reconstruct, your current state to look like when you first unlocked your iPhone or computer and gain access to all your data. So again, the software needs to be there for aging as well, because we all do it, regardless of any, Botox or anything like that. We're still going to change, because even that changes your facial features. Another one is it's less effective for women and people of color. That's a big con, because we have a lot of women and people of color, and it makes it more difficult or even easier for data to be stolen from women or people of color. So that's something that definitely needs to be more in updating the technology for this, so that no one is mistaken, no one is left out, and it grows with us. Biometric technology is fastly growing, and facial recognition is probably one of the coolest ones, I think, besides the walking and gestures. And it's a very interesting topic, and the fact that it's becoming your gateway to ticket holding or paying, it's pretty cool, but I think that we still need to be cautious for it. Does the risk outweigh the reward? Are we willing to lose most of our privacy because we want to use facial recognition because we think that it is safer than just a plain old password or our debit cards? I mean, potentially we lost a lot of our privacy having social media, having mobile devices, but are we willing to lose our facial signature? Because it is ours. No one looks the same. Not one person looks the same, not even identical twins, because there is some small similarity or small difference in their facial expression or contour. Even though they look the same to us in biometric technology, there's something that we're missing that they see that we don't. So are we willing to give it all up for this new technology or the future? I mean, essentially we have a little, but I feel with facial recognition we're going to lose it all, especially if we're putting it into every source of data or device or anything that we see as cool or need to. It's just something to think about, and we should all be protecting ourselves from whatever we need to, because not everyone is as trustworthy or honest as some of us may be. So it's better just to protect yourself and be aware and read up on what we need to for this, and making sure that our privacy is key, because once we lose it, there's no going back.